Welcome to the Mamas at Work podcast with your host, me, Heather Rose. I'm so excited you're here, and I hope you're ready to learn because I have some amazing women coming on to this podcast to talk all about entrepreneurship and being a mom and how we handle it all and juggle it all and maybe even balance. I love to talk about people's passions and find out what makes them excited about what they do and hopefully help the rest of us feel not so alone. So let's get going. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Mamas at Work podcast with your host, Heather Rose. I have with me today Rhonda Accardo, and that's how you say your name, right? Rhonda
Yes.
Accardo? Yes. And Jessica Waterstradt.
Yes.
I got them both. Yay. They are a mother and daughter team, and they wrote a book. I might have some video. I'm making some TikTok videos, so I'm just going to bring this up. So if I use this clip, then they can see the book. But they wrote this book called The Acorn and the Oak, and they sent me one before we even got on the interview, and I read it with my kids, and it's beautiful, and it's just this amazing story with a mother and a daughter, and I would love for you guys to talk about it. But I'm so excited to have you both as a mother and daughter team. So say hi to everybody.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for having us. We're excited to be here. So
Yeah, I'm so glad you're here. So tell me a little bit about your story, like how you came to this, because they have this amazing story in the back of the book. And so how did that come to be?
it came about, or it's always hard because I never know what to let her.
I went
take
to art
over.
school.
Yeah.
And my mom, and she can share maybe a little bit about this, throughout school was always called to the front of the class to read her papers. She's always had this gift for creative writing. And she has this little bit of a following on Facebook where, she posts her stories and life. She would just share life on,
Oh my gosh.
through these posts and writing. And so I went to art school. I was supported and loved by my parents to kind of push me into art and support that passion of mine. And I don't know at what point, but I realized that it was kind of a shame that you have somebody who loves to write and then somebody who loves to do art under the same house, or in the same house under the same roof.
Yeah. And
we didn't have anything to show for it. And so there was this, momentum behind working together. And then our family on my mother's side, I'll let you go from there, but gave us the inspiration to actually have a project to work on.
Yeah. So Jessica also, I think it's right when she got out of school around that time, she was like, Mom, we need to do a children's book together. And I thought, we could do that. And, but both busy. I'm a nurse, she's a flight attendant, and we're a crazy life. And I think it was 2016 that my aunt died. And my aunt was this amazing woman. She was 93 when she died, but she, when she was younger, lost her husband and 4 of her children, not at the same time. But she remained this amazing woman who her kids adored. And because she never changed and she just remained strong and humble, each kid she lost still had their mom at the fullest. And so at 93, when her health started to fail and the kids asked what her wishes were, she's like, I want to live. And so at the point she did pass, the kids asked me if I would write something for the funeral. So I wrote the story of the acorn and the oak, because oak trees are known for their strength and their beauty. And my cousins laugh at this point because I'll say, can you imagine if she knew how good the book's doing? And they'll say, oh my God, she'd be mortified because she is so humble.
Her story was
She wouldn't do that. So but anyhow, so and then at that point, when I read it at the funeral and I sat down, somebody behind me said, that has to be a children's book. And so my husband couldn't make it to the funeral. I read it to him in the car on the way back, and because he flew down, and afterwards, and he cried. And then I read it to Jessica, and she said, did you write that?
He's not a crier either.
Did you write that? And I was like, well, yeah, I don't know. So anyhow, and I said, I think I have a story that we could work with. And so that's kind of how it started.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Wow. Oh my gosh. No, and it's such a beautiful story too.
Thank
Because we
you.
talked about that a little bit before we started recording of the theme of the mother and the daughter. And I like that you said that you were both the mother and the daughter in
Yeah.
this kind of scenario. So talk a little bit, like give a little bit of what is happening in the book with that and how it relates to you guys.
So,
Well, I first found out that she was the little girl after I had done the little girl sitting under the
Really?
with all the
Yes,
acorns, and
yeah.
I'm like, oh, this
Yeah.
means so much more.
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And so with Jessica, then the little girl kind of resembles Jessica when she's little. So a lot of people are asking her, "Is that you? Is that you when you're little?" And but yeah, but I am the little girl in the story, and it's my mom, and it's the love of an old oak tree who is my aunt who, and their journey through this path that would take them into the forest to visit this old tree where they hear stories and stuff.
Oh,
And I'm very close with my mom. Our entire family is very close. My aunts and uncles, and they're all passed now. But the book, even though it's a story about loss, it's even more so a story about family and
mhm.
hope. And so I don't want people to think, "Oh, I'm not buying that because it's a sad book." It's,
It's good sad.
It's
yeah,
yeah, it's a good
Yeah.
kind of sad.
Happy tears.
yeah.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
but it's also about an adventure in the forest for little kids. They love seeing all the bugs and stuff in it,
Yeah.
and
Well, yeah, and that's the cool thing too, is we were talking about ages and how it works
Oh,
at different ages. And sometimes, if you watch a movie, certain things go over kids' heads, and
Mhm.
they take what they
at that age.
need at each age that they're at,
Mhm.
which is really kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that's the
I
cool
was
thing. I'm
sorry.
No, I was just gonna say that's the cool thing about it being so relatable too, is
Yeah.
that, because there a lot of, I think anybody can relate to either the
Yes.
mother or the
Yeah.
little girl running through. And artists have this sneaky little thing, we don't mean to do it, but we tend to draw ourselves in each picture. We do. I don't know if
Really?
you've ever heard that, but yeah, when you're drawing people or something, it tends to look like you because you've drawn yourself so many times practicing. But we did have a model for this, so it's
Yeah.
not me, but
Yep.
it is my
Charlie's our
mom.
little.
No.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, so who is the model for the mother?
Ooh.
That was one of my son's friends. We needed somebody with a timeless beauty, and she is the sweetest, kindest, most beautiful woman. And she just reminds you a lot of my aunt too. And the
Oh,
funny thing is we found people for you to draw, because when you talk to illustrators, they get people and they have to stand to model in positions for them to be able to get everything right. And so like with little Charlie, who's the little girl version, I sent Jessica a picture without even saying anything, and she said, "That's her." And then
We both
yeah. And even with Laura, I sent Jessica pictures, and Jessica was like, "Yes." And so you're praying that these people will say yes, because for some reason you don't want to just catch the picture. We wanted the personalities and the person to be there to fix or to
yeah.
fit the people in the book too. So, and then so it was our son's, one of his really good friends' mothers, and then they have a daughter. So the daughter's the grown-up little girl in the book too. So
Oh my goodness.
so yeah, there's lots of, and then the little Charlie, her mom is a nurse that works with me at the hospital. So there's another mother-daughter. And the cool thing is the book came out. No, not come out. The first big viewing that we did
The
with
first
the
time that
book,
the art was all together in a gallery
framed in a
space.
gallery space, was on Mother's Day.
On
And my
Mother's
mom
Day.
was actually up here with us.
No
So
way.
yeah, so it was cool. It was really
Oh my
cool.
gosh.
Yeah.
Well, that's such a huge thing. Yeah, that's such a generational beautiful moment.
And we didn't even realize it. It's like
Yeah.
standing there
It's
like,
not
wow,
planned.
yeah. So yeah.
You were just there and you're like, "Oh wow. This is
Right.
cool."
Yeah.
Is this happening?
Yeah.
Right.
It was neat. So there's been lots of those little moments throughout the book. But so yeah, when you were talking about the mother-daughter, Jessica and I, the mother, I always hoped I would love to have wrote a book, but I never saw it really happening, and then to be able to have that experience when you have a daughter who would love to be or do a book, but you're able to do it together. And then I love my mom. It's a beautiful tribute. She was 12 years younger than her sister. She would say every day when she came home from school, she would go straight to her sister's house, not even home. And so, it's that relationship in there. all her children who lost, and I don't know, people when they read the book said I read it 6 times, and 6 different times I read a completely different story. And when you look in there, the saplings, the acorns, the young trees, those are my aunt's, her children and grandchildren. And it's a gentle approach of teaching children about life and family. And so there's that relationship with my aunt and all her children, and their love, and them being there for her and her for them, and that strength. And then mine and Jessica's writing the book, and me and my mom, who are the little girl and the mother in the book. So,
Wait, did you want the long version of the short
Yeah,
version
sorry.
of the answer?
Yeah,
I want everything. I want to know everything.
Yeah.
I love this. No,
Yeah.
and it's such a beautiful story and a beautiful book. And I like that it's so, you said all the different saplings and the different acorns, and you're like, these are these different people. Everything is so tied into, nature, obviously. Is that a big theme for you guys as a family?
Huge. Yeah, huge. For me, like, and what I love about this book, and since it came out, it's meant more and more to me as time went on, because I was raised on a farm. The first 2 pictures, a little girl running down the path, I was barefoot. There was a dirt road from our house back to the woods.
Yeah, the picture right behind them.
Yeah. And so she's got that. And this year, the amazing thing is the book came out in November 21. And this year, everything's gone from the farm except for the house. And my little sister, her and me and the neighborhood's girls lived in those woods, always barefooted, running down there. The house came down. They took the house down. It was the only thing that was left. So the woods are the only thing that are left. And so I lost my little sister in April, and then I went back and took pictures of the house. And it was 134 years old when we moved there. So it was old. They burned it down. But the crazy thing is that day, this ugly farmhouse at this point, because the doors are missing, and but the skies look like Van Gogh, didn't it? The white swirls and the clouds all around it looked like a movie picture somebody had taken. And so Jessica captured so much of me in this book, and my life history. Like, I could go through page by page and tell you a story that's hidden throughout the book that you're not going to get unless you hear us talking somewhere. It's
right.
Yeah, we didn't play it like, she gave me full reign on the illustrations. And so for there to have been that many connections throughout the book is just something that was just really unique and very cool. And everything I did had a lot of intentionality with the layout and what I included, what I didn't include. Well,
and that was another thing, is she told me in the beginning, Mom, we need to sit down and you need to tell me what your vision is for the book, what you want. And I said, no, I want you to hear the story and draw what you see. And then that's what she did. And it's funny because her version's very different than what I would have done. Like, I had visions of like the squirrels leaping from tree to tree, of like them look like they're flying and going. And then the little girl, like probably everybody's favorite picture in the book is the little girl running through the puddles. And it's funny, like when I'm envisioning that picture, I'm seeing a little girl standing up on her toes with it squished down in the mud, her feet bent up, and I'm looking down. The crazy thing is I'm looking down at her feet like this, and she drew the picture looking up from the ground up. And it is amazing because we hear artist after artist after artist saying that's one of the perspective of that picture is just amazing. And so it's kind of cool. And I look at people who do books, and if you just trust artists are different people. They see things very differently. And if you can let them see
you're special.
We are very special.
They are, believe me. But if you just let them have free reign and to create something when they're a creative person, it's really cool what you end up with. So
well, and I think it speaks a lot to your connection to each other, like that you were able to, that you gave her free reign, and yet it still relates to you so well.
Yeah. Well, and she took stories from my childhood.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't know if I'm getting off task here. You can tell me if I am, and I'll be quiet. But
I will.
So, but there was a catalpa tree in our front yard, and it was a tree with heart-shaped leaves. And she had heard me tell the story, and without me even saying anything, she worked it into the book. And the crazy thing about that catalpa tree was my best friend and I, it was kind of a weird tree that went sideways, like Mowgli used to run up it. And so we would run up and get up the top and swing down. And I hadn't seen one for years since I'd left home. And one day there was a big flood at work and I had to go a different way and I saw one of those trees. So I called my mom on the cell phone. And I'm like, Mom, what is that tree called that was in the front yard that we always ran up? And she said it was a catalpa tree. And I said, well, I just saw one. 10 minutes later, I walk into the house and my neighbor that I told you we played with the girls next door, I walk into the house and I hit the answering machine and there's a message on there. Now, I hadn't talked to this girl for 15 years probably. Hit the message and it said, I don't know if I have the right number. This is the last number I had. I'm looking for Rhonda Accardo. I was on my lunch break out for a walk and I saw a catalpa tree and thought of you. 10 minutes later.
No.
And knowing that story, we have reconnected. We see each other all the time. They came up to see us and they had the long beans that's on the tree. She bought me a bunch of the long beans because they were our swords when we were kids. But that, and then the one, and there's tons of things like that. But one of the other big things is we were talking to you earlier about Jessica. It took us a year for the book to begin because Jessica's looking for that perfect tree. And
we would go on tree hunts.
Oh yeah, we
would get in the car and drive around.
Yeah.
There was one point that I thought I found the tree, and so I
several points.
Well, several points. So I had set up. There's plein air painting where you go and you make your setup, and I had done it in oil and was painting this tree.
Yeah.
On probably one of the busier intersections in our hometown. And you know, some people I knew were stopping. Hey, I know her. It was just really kind of bizarre. So I'm glad that wasn't the tree. It was a very nice tree, but we ended up finding this crazy there's tree. Nothing that compares to this tree.
But so the magic moment of this whole book is a year after. No, because that ties into, but it's a year after the funeral. Jessica keeps looking for this tree. I'm like, you're an artist, just create one. Her dad's getting upset and she's like, yeah. And she's like, you know, no, I want one to inspire me. And so I pull into a parking lot on a busy road where there was a Kroger's and a Barnes and Noble. And I thought this is never going to happen. And Jessica's too busy. I'm too busy. I'm crying. We've looked at thousands of trees. Jessica can't imagine how to draw a tree. And so I ball my hat off. I opened the door to get out, and outside the car door on the ground was a tiny acorn. There's not an oak tree inside. And it was like, I knew then the book was to be made. It was just a few days later. So I go on Facebook and I tell people, do you have a big oak tree? If you have one, we will fly to see your tree.
You're like, I've got to find one.
Yeah. So people are sending us pictures of tall, skinny trees.
Is real.
And I'm like, it's tall and skinny, but we're wanting like a mighty oak. And so my cousin then texts me and says, Rhonda, is this what's holding you guys up? Because I got a tree for you. It's the same cousin who had called me the night before the funeral at 8:30 at night. I'm in Michigan. He's like 7 hours away in Indiana, and said, you know, can you write something for my aunt's funeral? It was
his mom.
Yeah. So the two kids that are surviving. So he says, we got this tree. Me and my husband drive down there, get on four-wheelers, go through river bottoms, through the woods.
In the middle of nowhere.
Yes.
And then they
across farmers fields
to the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. And there is this massive tree, and I will send that picture to you because it is so big that when you look at the tree and it's by itself, you have nothing to compare it to.
Right.
And then you see this tiny red dot, who is my cousin's wife, picking up acorns, standing there, and it dwarfs her. And that was the tree. And it was amazing because once again, you have a mother and her child. He finds the perfect tree when we've been looking for a year. And it just so many moments like that in the book. That was crazy.
And just the tree itself is amazing and how it was found. But to state the magnificence of this tree is probably the largest bur oak in all of in the entire nation. The two I was researching, the two that came up were only, this is big, 25 feet around.
Oh my gosh.
The two largest known.
Yeah.
This one was measured at 27 and a half feet
Takes
around.
8 people
No
to
way.
go around. Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
how big this tree is. And the acorns match the size. I mean, they're bur oak acorns are huge.
Yeah.
They're big.
And
So, yeah.
and then one of the other
it's
cool
pretty
things
impressive.
is
It's really cool.
because my aunt, as a mother, as this amazing woman, was bigger than life to everybody.
Yeah.
Jessica originally did not want one picture, and if you look through the book, of the tree, looking at the whole thing in its entirety, because she wanted to leave it to people's imagination just how big she really was.
Right?
I don't know if you saw this. So the cool thing is, when you look at the book,
Oh my gosh.
but it's not one solid picture. And when you
I never
look
noticed that.
the aerial view looking down, and then being under the tree and looking up, was actually, and it's crazy because I found the photograph that she used off that is where all the animals are in the tree, you know, it's actually like that. And I don't know. And so it was everything was just perfect with the book. And so everybody's like, how long did it take? It took us a long time, and a lot of it wasn't even working on the book. Sometimes it was me looking for a perfect printer that took me a year to do, or we would get caught on one word, like one editor's like, oh, that's not a good word, and we're like, but I'm like, I like that word. And then we get stuck on something for a while, and but so it didn't take her 4 years to do.
Yeah, when you say, and I think the from start to finish, and when I started the artwork until finish, I think it was maybe 6 years.
No, it wasn't that long. It was but anyhow,
it was a good chunk of time, but there were other things. Life happens.
And they're big.
Yeah.
You know, you can tell how big that is. I don't know how big, but they're huge. And the process that she went through was huge. So you draw it out. If you put it on watercolor, it bleeds. So you draw it on paper, you trace it, you put it back on the color paper, and then layers of coloring. The mother-daughter scenario that in this book that's kind of cool is like when she was little, it's not like I had a lot of fancy jewelry, but she loved to come get in my jewelry box.
Yeah.
But as a mother, when she left on trips, because she's a flight attendant, I would go into her room and look at her art, because it was like what changed with the art. And to me, that was the jewelry box. You know, it was just such a cool thing. So
oh my goodness.
So
yeah, well, and I'm kind of fascinated by this because it's such a beautiful story, and it's about that, you know, that specific woman, but it also relates to the rest of your family in different ways. But the whole writing of the book is a story in itself.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, no, you've got like so many different connections and like things that happened just to make this book happen.
Well, and
it's amazing.
I'm glad you said that, because one thing is, you know, editors will tell you, we debated about putting the story of my aunt in here, because one thing, it's a children's book, but it is a story about loss. But you don't want to put so much of yourself into the book that people read it and say, that's a story about that.
Right, they can't relate to it.
Yes, this is my story. And that's one of the coolest things, is the very first person that Jessica walked to ask if they'd carry our book. She was like, this is my story. And people are, this is my story. Or people want to buy her prints and they're like, that's my granddaughter, or that's me. This takes me back to my childhood. And so every time somebody says that, even if they miss the whole story behind it, you're like, that's a win. And
to be able to connect and to, you know, bring you back into that, those memories of childhood.
And the crazy thing is, I think one of the most, like, we love seeing the kids when they love it, or, you know, hearing about a little kid with ADHD that spends 3 hours in it searching for the animals, and how relatable it is there. But when it's almost like a Peter Pan book, when we get it into somebody's hands that are like grandparent, like great grandparents, it takes them back to their childhood. And we're finding they'll buy it for a grandchild, but then they read it and they're coming back and buying 5 more. And because it hits them at a different level, then it's just crazy how every generation, we get people my age buying it for their parents. You get grandparents buying it for their children, for all their children to each have their own copy. And so it's been nice, you know, it's been,
because that's what you want. You want to connect with people. You don't.
Exactly.
It's not about
it's not about that like selfish need
No.
to keep it my story. That's
Right.
not what it's about.
Yeah.
And it's really cool hearing the stories back. I mean, that was,
Oh,
yeah, especially, there were so many really hard parts through the process. And then it breathes life back into you when you start to hear the meaning and how important that is to people.
the stories we hear back.
It's just really, that's what it's really all about. So,
Yeah.
you know,
And you would love to, each of those stories that you hear back, if we put them in a collection, would be one of the most beautiful books. The problem is a lot of people, the stories we hear are very personal and deep, and it's just insane and crazy. And you come home and then you're more thankful for your family, you know, and just, and the love. So a lot of times when I'm sitting at a vendor show and somebody comes up, I almost feel like Ann Landers. Some days you may not sell a ton of books, but you've connected with the people, and it's just, it's been a crazy adventure, you know.
And so if, you know, there's any advice to give to people who are in the middle of like a really difficult process, especially if it's one to pour into other people, it can be really challenging to fight and battle through what you need to battle through in order to kind of see that thing through until the end. But you know, to just keep your focus on the impact that you're going to make, you know.
Well, and to me, even at Mother's Day, this was a perfect gift to give a mother, because it's about that story of a mother-child relationship, you know. So in so many ways. And like I said, if you keep reading it, you're going to get something. And that's the cool thing, is when you hear somebody that they picked a children's book up and they reread it and they reread it, but you had a little kid, you know, one of the girls that just bought it at work said it's her daughter's new favorite book. You know, she's got it all the time. So when you're hearing these different levels, and then there was a little boy there was a little girl who lost a good friend, and she was little. And when the mom read the book, she said how much it helped them, and that she wished every child at the grieving center could have them. So we donated 30 books to the grieving center. And we had these wooden acorns that were button boxes at the top comes off, where they could put messages inside and trinkets. And the kid said it was the best night ever. And after that, a few months later, I'm at a vendor show, and a little boy comes up and brings me a gift to thank me. And it's like, you know, so you look at these different levels, you know, whether 8 or 12 and they're coming and they're telling you, and it's so cool to see. Or if somebody lost a little child, we get those parents, the people that lose their mothers that have lost their children, whether they're 70 and lost a child. That has been, you know what, it's like, I don't know. I can't even explain it, put it into words. It's just been an incredible experience to be able to share that, you know, how one mother who loved her family so much and went through so much pain, but together they pulled together as a family, and they, you know, hung on to their mom, and their mom hung on to them. And you know, you when you tell somebody that she lost a child and 4 children, I almost, like, I had to go through and think, I want to list how everybody passed, because they're going to think it's like I don't know, like a Black Widow scenario. How can one mom lose so much? And I'm thinking,
like, what's going on?
Yeah. And then, you know, but she remained this incredible person. And it's like, that lady had heartache. She went through it. But like my mom said, it was her pillow that caught all the tears, you know, because for her kids, she stayed strong. And then for and who at 93, when you have lost so much, wants to keep living. And it's like, but you know, she had all those little grandkids. She had all her kids who adored her, and she adored them. And she had a lot of faith. And you know, that for her is how she got through. So,
well, and she kind of does live on in this story.
Yeah. And that's the big thing. And that's for us, the acorns and oak trees. I can't tell you how many. My husband said, Rhonda, you can't buy every acorn thing out there. It's like,
you're like, why not?
And it's become this huge thing for our family, the acorn and the oaks. And but what was I going to say? But our thing is, so it brings a smile. So we hope everybody at the end of this can say, you know what, Grandpa, you know, he always I don't know, did whatever he did, and there's something they see all the time that brings a smile to them. Read the book, you know, read the story, then you look in your own family and find those things that remind them of them, and keep them living on, because they do live on. There's no, and so that's it. It's a general approach to, it's hope, it's family, it's love, it's
all the good
love
feels.
up to the.
It's all the good feels.
Yeah.
Oh, it's
So,
amazing. Well, I just thank you guys so much for coming and talking about this book and about
yeah.
your relationships and all of that. I've just really enjoyed talking to you two. And is there possibly another book in your future? Because I mean, you've got the gift. Really?
Yeah.
Well, it's, we each have our own projects that.
Right.
I've written one. And so now the pressure's on, because she did such an amazing job with this. And we've had people that bought the book because they'll say, I bought it because you're mother and daughter, book. And I think that's so cool that the pressure's on. The problem is she's working on a book that's amazing. She needs to get that done. And so it's like, do I find somebody else to work on this book with me?
Mm.
And that's one of the, if I had a wish, it'd be, can Jessica have 48 hours in a day instead of 24? So
I'm kind of asking for like 100.
Yeah. So
I think that would be nice. And
yeah, she's
sometimes.
Yeah. And the energy to keep up with all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got some things in the works.
Yep.
And
we do.
Stay tuned.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, tell everybody, I'm gonna have your links in the show notes, but tell everybody where they can find you. Do you still do your like Jessica was saying, you have your little Facebook posts, you tell stories?
We're our everything is still in progress. I think we're working on getting more of a blog situation getting. I'm sorry. Words would be nice.
Yeah.
I know what you mean.
Painted Thistle Press is our website, and there's a blog on there. You can, she has a personal Facebook page, which she shares all sorts of stories. But people can follow her.
But I need to direct. I am really horrible on social media as far as knowing how. I'm not tech savvy, so it's trying right now. Like I tried to set up an author page that's tagged into my regular page, and so I'm trying to work on that. But Painted Thistle Press is our website. On there, I started a blog. It'll be going on there. We're on Instagram, and it's
nice.
And then the Acorn and the Oak is actually on. But the book, Acorn and the Oak of the book, because the Acorn and the Oak is also a restaurant. It's got all kinds of things behind it. So if you go on the Instagram.
But that's a good hub, is the paintedthistlepress.com.
Yeah.
So. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. I'll put all the links in the show notes. And I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. This is fun.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining me for today's Mamas at Work podcast. I am so glad you were here, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did and learned a lot, because I know I always do. Please join me at my Mamas at Work Facebook group, where we will be talking about the women that are on this podcast, and you can sign up to be a guest on the podcast as well if you would like to. Thank you so much. See you next Friday.